This build honestly surprised me. During Season 18 and 19, all anyone used on Titan was Heart of Inmost Light with Storm Nades because it was one of the best builds in the game. That build took a bunch of hits over the last two seasons, and even as recent as the release of Lightfall. The build is still good, but I did want to revisit what other options Titan had on Arc, and let you know that I was certainly shocked. Now, for people who love the ability cycle of Heart and can manage it well, Heart of Inmost Light is still a great exotic, and can be used instead of the exotic of choice today. It will even outperform it in some scenarios, but for those of you who just want to turn your brain off and run around with the simplicity of throw a grenade and get a grenade back, this build is definitely the build for you. This build can get the job done in many different activities, including Master Lost Sectors and Grandmaster Nightfalls. With its insane ad clear capability, the option to stun all three champions, and honestly, the fun of running around shocking everything. On top of how fun the build is, we are assumed to be getting arc-related artifact mods next season, which will make the build excel even more than it already does. Now let's get to the build. To start off the video, I talked a little bit about Heart and how dominant it was, so I feel like a good place to start would be with the exotic armor of choice. This was obvious with the thumbnail, but it's none other than Armamentarium, which will provide the very simple ability of giving a second grenade charge. That's it, and that's just enough to get the build up and running. Like I said earlier, you could use Heart of Inmost Light if you would rather, but I just prefer this setup. The grenade of choice will be Pulse Grenade because of the surprising and insane buff Lightfall gave it with a 20% increase to PvE damage. The grenade easily outperforms Storm Nade strictly because of the nerf Storm Nade has received over the last few months. Pulse Grenade also plays perfectly with the build's idea of throwing grenade after grenade with our first aspect, Touch of Thunder. Touch of Thunder's whole idea is to increase the potency of certain arc grenades, specifically on Pulse, giving it the ability to generate ionic traces as the grenade damages targets over time, as well as ramping the damage. This generates 3 ionic traces over 5 pulses, as well as making the damage increase each pulse. Now, since our build is centered around grenade spam, our second aspect is a little weird. Still not a hard choice though, because who uses Juggernaut in PvE? But the next aspect is Knockout. Now, I say this aspect is weird because it is a melee focused aspect, increasing our melee damage when weakening targets or breaking shields. This paired with our Thunderclap melee does some decent damage. While it sounds nice, we are using this aspect for a whole nother reason. The second part of the perk reads, defeating targets with melee attacks starts health regen. This is very useful as it works with uncharged melees as well as Thunderclap. This build does lack healing at times, so being able to get an extra melee or two off to start health regen is very welcome and a nice add-on to the build. Moving over to the fragments, I messed with many different sets of fragments, landing on this to be my favorite setup. First up, we have Spark of Shock. Now, this is a grenade-centered build, so we want to beef up the nade, increasing damage and add clear capabilities with this single fragment that just lets our grenade apply Jolt. Very simple fragment, but probably one of the best fragments on Arc 3.0. This next fragment, Spark of Ions, gives us Ionic Traces on Jolt kills, and this pairs perfectly with our previous fragment. Ionic Traces are the main part of the build because they're a tracking ability energy generator that gives 12.5% of our grenade per pickup. Super easy to proc, and it just gives free energy. Who wouldn't want that? This third fragment increases the potency of our pulse grenade even more by extending its duration from 5 pulses to 7. This also increases the maximum amount of ionic traces one pulse grenade produces from 3 to 4, meaning one nade can potentially give you 50% of your energy back with a single throw. Mods later on will pair perfectly with this and make the cycle even better than just the 50% provided from this fragment. Our last fragment doesn't necessarily buff the grenades anymore, but it does help our survivability in giving us a 25% damage resist when surrounded. This last fragment is named Spark of Resistance. It's not the most noticeable fragment in the game, but definitely will save you more times than you would realize. The last two things I want to cover is use whatever super class ability you would like. I went with Thunder Crash and Thruster strictly for the burst damage from Thunder Crash and the low cooldown of Thruster, but these are both interchangeable with whatever other options you would like. Now I just want to take a quick second to ask you guys to subscribe. These videos take a good amount of effort and I would really appreciate your support and to see you guys come back in future videos. That's all, I hope you guys enjoyed the build. Moving over to weapons, as I like to say, use whatever you want, but this setup is a little different than some people would expect. To start off, we have Arbalest to deal with champions as well as dealing a nice chunk of damage. Then we have Tarnished Metal with Demo and Volt Shot, and Chain of Command. The reason I have Tarnished Metal is because it's the only gun in the game that can roll with Demo and Volt Shot on the primary ammo slot, and Chain of Command is here because with Osmosis and Demo, I can make this an arc grenade generator. Now you can run this build with Ikelos SMD or any weapon with Volt Shot really, but sadly the Arc LMG department is lacking really strong weapons, but if you have to use one, use Terminus Horizon from Spire the Watcher with Demo Target Lock. I think that would be a fantastic weapon to use here. Unfortunately, I do not have these, so this is what I'm running here today. It's not a bad build, it works, and I will continue to run it with this build. I like it a lot. Moving over to the mods now, starting off with the orb generators, we have Harmonic Siphon to generate orbs off of Arc multi-kills, Firepower for grenade kills, and Reaper for getting a kill after using Arc class ability. Picking up these orbs of power gives us armor charges, which can be used for several things, but first we'll be using 2 mods to increase the potency of these armor charges. These mods being Stacks on Stacks, which makes it so when we grab an orb we get 2 armor charges instead of 1, and Charged Up, which lets us stack up to 4 charges. These charges are going to be used with 2 copies of Grenade Kickstart, meaning that when we throw our grenade when we have 4 armor charges, we get roughly 45% of our grenade back. On top of that, we have 2 copies of Innovation so that we get 13% of our grenade back when we grab an orb of power. Throw in 2 bombers to the mix to add an additional 15% when we use our class ability, as well as 2 ashes to assets so that we can get increased super energy when we get grenade kills. To top off the mods, we have 2 resist mods, melee being 1 and whatever element you are fighting to be the other. Add on whatever stat mods you need to top off those stats and everything is good to go. The stats you should be prioritizing on this build are Resilience first, Discipline second, and then Strength. Jumping to the artifact, there isn't much here that helps this season, so I would just recommend grabbing Grenade Discount, Shadow Orbs, and Prismatic Transfer. The rest of the artifact doesn't suit the build that well, but like I said earlier, next season the artifact should have some arc mods that will hopefully add a nice touch to the build, and make it even stronger than it already is today. This little section is just going to be the gameplay loop, and quite honestly, it's just as simple as throw a grenade, get grenade energy back. As long as you're mixing in some scout rifle kills, some LMG kills, get some demo procs in there, you're gonna be having your grenade up for every single engagement. Even if you're just swarmed by ads, you'll have so many grenades that you literally could just have a nade on a group of ads no matter what. Throw in a thruster every once in a while, get bomber proc, get some grenade energy back that way, and throw in a melee if you need health. And you'll just get a bunch of thunder crashes, you'll get a bunch of grenades to throw around, and just all around a super, super fun build. I hope you guys enjoy. So this part here is going to be unscripted, but it's just going to be important things to know with the build. So we're going to start off with champions. Champions are a very important part of the game and things that we need to deal with like every day in Destiny for endgame content. This build is super good because you can deal with all 3 enemy types, or all 3 champion types. The grenade has Jolt, so you can stun overloads with just a grenade, and your Volt Shot, if you have a Volt Shot propped on your weapons, you can also stun with that, even if they have intrinsic stuff. So like I have Unstoppable from the artifact on my Scout Rifle, but the Volt Shot from my Scout Rifle will still stun overloads. On top of that, you have, like I said, Scout Rifle for overloads, and then Arbalest for anti-barriers. So you have all 3 champions covered. You could pretty easily take them down and restun them without like any worries. Super easy build for like GMs and stuff, and I would recommend running through it because I was having a lot of fun the other day with it. Second thing I want to cover is currently at the time of this video, April 27th, Firepower is bugged. It is not spawning orbs of power. It says it in the bottom left that it is, but you can't find the orb. It just isn't on the ground. So this build is actually bugged at the moment, and it'll get like just that much better when they eventually buff it. Or not buff it, but fix it. Hoping for Guardian Games fix, but Bungie hasn't commented on it that I know of, so I don't even know if it's on their radar. Hopefully they realize it's bugged soon. But yeah, and that's about it for the video. The video took quite a few days to make it. Honestly, a little bit of procrastination didn't help, but yeah, I put a lot of effort in this video. I would appreciate some support, guys. If you guys want to leave a like, subscribe. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subs, so if you guys want to support me on my journey and stick around, yeah. I'm going to leave the rest of this Master Lost Sector gameplay in the background because people wanted to see how my past builds would react in endgame content. So here's a little bit of endgame content, some Master Lost Sector farming. But yeah, that's it for the video again. I hope you guys all have a good day, and I'll see you guys next time.